Words permanent. I am happy to find that all sections of the House are unanimous in their support to the bill under consideration. So my task has been rendered much lighter because it is always the minister's lot of answer questions. I do not have to put questions to myself and answer them since there is no question from the other side. There are just one or two points which have been raised in this connection. I would like to make one or two general observations. A point was raised about Manipur. I am sure that with a little more initiative on the part of the state government and the home ministry we could this very bill, but as it so happened there has been some delay. I would like to assure the House that we shall avail the earliest opportunity to take necessary steps in this matter. Another point which was raised was about the monitoring and evaluation of tribal development schemes. There is an officer in the home ministry who looks after this, but I would like to express my first reaction to the demand made here by saying that this has now become a massive program all over the country and just one officer or a few working under him may not be able to deliver all that is required by way of evaluation and monitoring. I have already discussed about this with the officials of the ministry. I think it is necessary that when work gets multiplied and it is not possible to keep track of what is happening where, we must have some efficient system to give us the feedback so that there is no delay and we know where we stand at a given point of time, plan after plan. It is well known that we are spending more and more money making sustained and concerted efforts in several directions for the amelioration of the tribals. There is no doubt that we have succeeded in this respect, but of course there is much more to do, and that is always the case. The more you do, there is a lot to be done. This is the position. The tribes have always been an integral part of the Indian society. Take our epics and Ramayana and Mahabharata, we find that the tribal people have played a great part in the making up of this mosaic of Indian society. We have a beautiful combination of history and tradition. The history and mythology, it is very difficult to separate the two and say where one ends and the other begins. It is a fascinating combination which clearly shows that investigation was there at all levels and in all fields of life. The River Valley civilization as we know it or have heard of it or read about it, it is much later phenomenon, and naturally being a later phenomenon it must have borrowed so much from its predecessor, that is the tribal society. So I have no doubt in my mind that the Indian society has maintained this integration. The questions of identity on one side and the problems of integration on the other should be so tackled to avoid any conflict between the two. Once conflict is allowed to creep in, there is strife and alienation. I have no doubt that as we have managed so far, we will be able to manage in future also to see that this conflict never arises. Indian society has the inherent capacity to absorb variety and not to create any foreign bodies within itself. So there is no foreign bodies at all in the Indian society. I hope that the government and the people will join in the effort to keep this society as it has always been. I know of many tribes whose way of life, I may say so, is much saner and much more desirable than that of the plains people in the great churning which we know of. Both nectar and poison were created. No one could say, I will take only nectar, I will not take poison. So this is the life of this, where discrimination between good and bad would be needed. To what extent the aspirations of the tribal people have to be met and where these aspirations get misguided and of the tribal people have to met taken to the form of separatism is to be clearly understood. Reconciliation between the integration on the one hand and identity on the other has to take place. I am glad to see that there is such a spontaneous unanimity on this matter.